I still shiver when I remember that dreadful day. It happened 4 years ago. My friend Emma and I were walking home from the market, enjoying the warm African sun on our skin, when we saw our neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, crying outside her house. "What's wrong, Mrs. Johnson?" Emma asked, concern etched on her face. "That wicked landlord, Mr. Kofi, has locked me out," she exclaimed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He wants 6 months' rent, but I paid him just last week. I don't know what to do." We were shocked. Mr. Kofi was notorious for being cruel and heartless. Everyone in the neighborhood feared him. Emma and I decided to help Mrs. Johnson. As we approached Mr. Kofi's office, we heard screams and pleas for mercy. We rushed in and found Mrs. Johnson's 16-year-old son, Kwame, tied up and beaten. Mr. Kofi's thugs, two burly men with menacing grins, were standing over him. "Leave him alone!" I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. The thugs turned on us, their eyes gleaming with malice. Emma quickly called the police, her hands shaking. "Please hurry," she whispered into the phone. Mr. Kofi appeared, his face twisted in anger. His eyes, once warm and friendly, now seemed cold and calculating. "You meddling fools," he snarled. "You'll pay for interfering. You think you can stop me? I own this town." Suddenly, the police arrived, responding to Emma's call. Mr. Kofi's face changed in an instant. He pretended to be concerned. "Officer, these people are trespassing," he lied, his voice dripping with innocence. But the police weren't fooled. They arrested Mr. Kofi and his thugs, freeing Kwame. As we walked Mrs. Johnson and Kwame home, Emma turned to me and whispered, "We did it. We saved them." But just then, Mr. Kofi's car screeched to a halt beside us. He leapt out, eyes blazing with fury. "You think you've won?" he growled, holding up a knife. "You'll never win. I'll show you." The police quickly subdued him, but not before he revealed a shocking secret. Mrs. Johnson's husband, Chief Johnson, was alive. Mr. Kofi had been hiding him, extorting rent from Mrs. Johnson by pretending her husband had abandoned her. We were stunned. The neighborhood had thought Chief Johnson was dead, lost at sea. Mrs. Johnson had been living a lie. The police took Mr. Kofi away, and Mrs. Johnson was reunited with her husband. They hugged, tears of joy streaming down their faces. As Emma and I walked away, shaken but relieved, I turned to her and said, "That was close. Too close." "Too close," Emma replied, smiling. "But justice won today." We realized that sometimes all it takes is courage and a phone call to bring down the wicked. The neighborhood celebrated the Johnsons' reunion. Mr. Kofi faced trial and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. His thugs received 5 years each. Mrs. Johnson and her family moved to a new home, free from Mr. Kofi's tyranny. Emma and I became local heroes, our names whispered in awe. But the memory of that dreadful day stayed with me, a reminder of the power of courage and friendship. I hope you all like the story. Please subscribe, like, and share. See some other time. Thanks.